welcome to our global community. My name is Amelia, and I'll be hosting our event today. And I would like to welcome you to the True Spirit of the Enneagram webinar. And we are here today with longtime Diamond Approach and Enneagram teacher and author of The Spiritual Dimension of the Enneagram, Sandra Maitri, as well as Russ Hudson, who is the co-founder of the Enneagram Institute and one of the top teachers and developers of the Enneagram personality typology in the world. We're going to begin today's webinar with a short meditation, which will help us all arrive in this space together. And then Sandra and Russ will give us a talk on today's topic. After the talk, we'll have time for questions and comments with the teachers before we close the session. And with that, it is my great honor to turn things over to Sandra and Russ.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Sandra and I have had a lot of fun getting together and looking at what we'll be exploring today. But the Enneagram is fundamentally, originally, about presence. It's about coming back to ourselves. And so we are going to kick it off with a period of meditation. We want to start by arriving where we are. And just to say that the beautiful thing about the body is the body can only be here and now. Mind can be anywhere, emotions can be anywhere. But if we're trying to collect ourselves, it really behooves us to become aware of body on a deeper level. So we begin by just generally relaxing, finding a place to sit where we can be relaxed but awake. First, to just be a little more aware of my breath. Not thinking about it, but sensing it. So I can just, in a general way, just notice sensation. Maybe the sensation of my feet, the sensation of my body resting on the chair, the cushion, the floor, wherever I might be sitting. And to stay with that sensation. And if I start daydreaming or visualizing or something, no worries. Just gently say, oh, come back, come back. And to the best of your ability, just keep coming back to sensation, breath, and to land in this cot, this belly center. And see what happens as you make that effort. You can close your eyes or leave them very slightly open. See what helps you feel good.
I'd just like to say how honored I am to be here with all of you, how much both of us are deeply honored that Hamid Ali, who writes under the name of A.H. Almaas, asked us to teach this course and bring his new book into a living reality for all the participants.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're working within a certain context here. And we want to just kick it off by saying a little bit about how we've come to orient to the Enneagram. And certainly we'll be talking about how the Enneagram relates to the diamond approach and how the diamond approach relates to the Enneagram, actually. One thing that we can notice, no doubt, is that a lot of people are talking about the Enneagram these days. There are tons of podcasts and webinars and books and articles and social media pages, just everyone's yakking about it. But I think Almaas, Hamid, as we call him in the school, and a number of us are very interested in making available to a broader range of people interested in the Enneagram more of its spiritual roots. Where did it come from? What was it originally for? If we go back and look at the history of it, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about right now, what we can say succinctly is that the Enneagram was a development within contemplative communities. It arose within spiritual schools and teachings where people were striving to be present. And so in its original sense, the Enneagram was all about what we might call the interface between our ordinary consciousness and the deeper dimensions of what we are as human beings. And the traditional Enneagram language, which is shared in the Diamond Heart School, is that we have personality and we have essence. And a human being is both in some sense. But the idea is that 99% of the time, if we're lucky, we're identified more with the personality, with the egoic manifestations. And the deeper roots of essence pop through here and there just by grace, by the fact that they are more real than most of what we have our attention on. But a human being can learn to locate their sense of themselves in this deeper reality, this essential reality, wherein, it's not exactly that we're trying to banish or get rid of the personality, but in meeting it with presence, compassion, groundedness, it takes its proper place. It's the idea is not to get rid of the ego or the personality, but to have it take its proper place, to function in the way it can and the way it can support us. So the Enneagram is very explicitly about that interface, but interestingly, and I know Sandra's going to talk about this, this was a lot of the genius of what Hamid Ali brought to the world through his spiritual explorations, was that there are very precise and amazing connections between the deeper dimensions of our being, our essential nature, our true nature, and what manifests in our day-to-day egoic consciousness. There are connections. So the Enneagram, in its original sense, was a really cool way to begin to explore the nature of those connections, which is what we'll be looking at. I would say that the personality is very interesting. People love to learn about the personality. Everybody wants to have a good description of their personality, and we get more and more and more elaborate with how we do that, which is okay. But I just want to suggest that at some point it becomes dissatisfying. It leads to a certain kind of dead end. And if we don't understand this deeper dimension of the Enneagram and indeed of ourselves, we're going to just get frustrated and bored and wander off to something else. So the idea here that we want to present to you is how the Enneagram is a tool for exploring our deeper nature and seeing its relationship with our personality structures, but also how brilliantly the work of Hamid Ali Almaas has been in exactly that, and why the two can work very, very well together, which is what Hamid is offering in his book, Keys to the Enneagram. So maybe, Sandra, you might talk more about Hamid's work with this and how it does relate to the Enneagram.
Yeah, sure. The thing that Hamid and I were both taught, we learned the Enneagram in the first SOT group that Claudio Naranjo led. And for those of you unfamiliar with that name, he's really the father of what's become popularized as the Enneagram of personality. And it's like most of the significant teachers in the world who teach the Enneagram, their work is derived from his work. He in turn studied with Oscar Ichazo. And because Claudio was a psychiatrist, he embellished sort of the skeletal model that Ichazo had with his understanding of various psychological dynamics and really fleshed it out. So it became a true map of the personality or ego structure. And in the group with Claudio, we worked with it as a tool, not as an end in and of itself, not to know more about our psychology and our personality structure, but only to do that as a means to discover what lies beyond our ego structure. And from what I know, what was imparted to me by Claudio, that's the true function of the Enneagram. And as Russ was saying, it's not about basically developing a stronger egoic identity with lots of concepts and labels about who and what you are, but actually to get out of that enclosure within ourselves, which at a certain point, many of us find to be incredibly confining. And we want to know more about who and what we are. And that's really the beginning of an inner journey for people. The innovations that Hamid made in the work of the Enneagram are pretty staggering. I mean, they're basically, he's quite a unique individual. And I'm very grateful to know him in this life. He discovered that qualities of the divine that we call being or that we call true nature, that the various qualities of true nature, the various ways it shows up, are characterized by a sense of presence. There's a heft to them. There's a substantiality. When we talk about non-dual reality, what Hamid discovered and felt in his own interior experience is those non-dual experiences have a kind of substance to them. And he also realized that presence, true nature, they have a presence to it. We call that heft presence. And that the presence of true nature differentiates into many different faces and colors, many of which are commonplace in everyday human life. And that's really where the divine interfaces with ordinary egoic reality. So the experiences that we have of compassion, of people doing things that are altruistic, going beyond themselves, situations of like superhuman strength that's needed, for instance, for a mother to get her child out of a very dangerous situation, the capacity to persevere at something that's really challenging. Hamid discovered these are all different ways the presence manifests. And what he also saw is that the absence of contact with all of the different qualities of essence, of presence, show up in our psychology as very, what's the word? Very obvious, very characteristic issues that are universal to all human beings to the extent that they're disconnected from being. He also, because of his background with the Enneagram, saw that there's a direct relationship between these qualities of presence and each of the Enneatypes, which is to say, and this is really the understanding that's explicated in Keys to the Enneagram, that each of the Enneatypes and their behavioral, emotional, psychological patterns correspond to a particular quality of presence that they're trying to emulate, trying to get, trying to capture through certain behaviors. And you think of a quick example of that. For instance, I use the example of strength. One of the Enneatypes is very determined to be strong no matter what, and not to be vulnerable, not to show weakness. And it's really an attempt, if we scratch under the surface of that personality structure, to reconnect with a sense of inner vitality, aliveness, a sense of a to-do, can-do sense, instead of it being something that's put on, as it were, that's focused upon as an end, and rather it's just something that's a given. And as we see in the Keys to the Enneagram, each of the 9 types has one particular quality of true nature whose facsimile is elaborated in how the Enneatype functions. So Hamid calls it Key to the Enneagram, calls his book Keys to the Enneagram, because if we really can penetrate with our understanding, and by understanding, I mean direct experiential understanding, not just mental, cognitive understanding, to what it is that our problematic behavioral styles and ways of being are attempting to capture, attempting to emulate, then we begin to open the door to experiencing directly the quality of true nature that each of the Enneatypes is associated with. So in a nutshell, that's the focus of our course. We're hoping to give each participant the opportunity to discover all of the Enneatypes within themselves, because they're all different cornerstones of the ego or personality. We have them all. One is more highlighted. We're giving participants the opportunity to discover what all of the Enneatypes are emulating, are idealizing, are trying to be. And then through the various exercises that we'll take you through to get in touch with what that true quality is and what the direct experience of it is like. And really, in this way, Hamid is bridging the realm of the diamond approach and the realm of the Enneagram. And it's a very revolutionary bridging from my perspective, because the two streams have never been as fully integrated as I'm seeing them integrated in this book. Hamid's other book that many of you may be familiar with about the Enneagram, Facets of Unity, talks about the 9 enlightened views of each of the Enneatypes, the loss of which leads to the development of each of the Enneatypes. And this book and this course will bring things down to a much more practical, ongoing understanding of how these dynamics function in us in our ordinary daily life. So, yeah, I think, do you want to add anything, Russ?
Yeah, sure. I think I could add how I came upon the diamond approach and how important it was to me. When I think it would be interesting for people to know that I got interested in the Enneagram originally back in the 1970s, but not the typology, which was not really known at that point, except to a few people. More, I was interested, I was interested in the Gurdjieff work, and I studied under people in the Gurdjieff work who lived with Gurdjieff. So it wasn't like by post office. I got the direct transmission, and it was very helpful. I mean, we learned about the centers, which is important in the Enneagram work. We learned about being asleep and what it might mean to awaken. We learned about a lot of things that are crucial to the understanding. I was in that work for, like 15 years when I encountered Hamid. And as Sandra was just saying, I had been studying the Enneagram. By that point, I had met Don Richard Riso, and we had begun to work on describing the personality types. Don had been working on that also since the 1970s. But when I encountered Hamid's brilliant exploration and explication of these different dimensions and qualities of presence and essence, it was a mind-blowing revelation, so important to me. In most spiritual traditions, there is a favored quality. This is the correct thing. This is what enlightenment looks like. If you get this experience, that's the experience. But what Hamid noticed is that as we become more transparent within ourselves, the deeper nature of what we are, what in the diamond approach we call true nature, is liberated to express whatever needs to get expressed, to bring forth whatever needs to bring forth. I might be trying to dial up one kind of quality of presence, but actually what my consciousness, my soul needs in that moment could be something else. And we learn to trust that there's a deeper unfolding of these qualities. And from that point of view, the Enneagram is about getting out of the box of how we limit our availability to the dance of reality. And I found the diamond approach and Hamid's teachings and my wonderful colleagues and friends in the school to be a magnificent way of working on just that. How do we, I'm kind of famous for a smart alecky thing I said years ago, which is, I said, the Enneagram doesn't put you in a box. It shows you the box you're already in without realizing it and how to get out of it. And that's in a sense, obviously, what we're going to be doing in the course, and using the wonderful perspective and practices of the Diamond Approach and the things that Hamid has written in Keys to the Enneagram as a guide to how we can all do that individually and collectively. I'd also say we don't have the luxury of a ton of time anymore. You know, our capacity to show up, to really be able to follow our compassion, our ability to really meet each other on another basis than just our polarizing ego patterns, is pretty important right now. And I suspect it will be even more so in the not too distant future. So there's a kind of, I don't want to say exactly urgency, but there's a kind of like, if not now, when? Like, if I'm really serious about this, let's get on with it. And that's also part of my joy in doing this journey with Sandra and with the support of Hamid and Karen in the school. It's time for us to really apply ourselves to understanding that there may be other boxes beyond our own individual one that need to be explored and let go of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to second what you're saying, Russ. I was watching the news last night, and a lot of it was the catastrophes happening, different sorts of catastrophes all over the planet, environmental catastrophes, catastrophes happening with people and starvation and so on. And it's a very, very interesting and challenging time that we're living through. And I know that the motivation for both Russ and I in doing this course, and of course in doing everything else that we do as teachers, is to really support the whole of humanity to open up, to get out of their individual boxes, as Russ was calling it, the containment that keeps us operating in ways that are harmful to ourselves and to others and to the planet. And there isn't a lot of time. It's important, and it's important now. It's a very, very unusual time. I think we've never gone through this kind of passage in human history. For myself, spiritual work has been part of my journey since I was 21 years old. And I was 22 when I met Claudio and began working in his first SOT group in 1971, which is where I met Hamid and Karen. Karen and I were roommates in art school at the time. And that's what my life has been devoted to. It's been devoted to inner work, spiritual work, work on moving beyond the box. And I feel very fortunate to have come across the tools that Hamid, who was simply a friend and a colleague back in those days, discovered and were downloaded to him, that are really quite revolutionary in spiritual technology. The ancient forms of spiritual work were all about transcending the layer that the Enneagram of personality describes, of finding a way to get out of it and above it, beyond it, into the non-dual reality of being. And Hamid's innovation, which I had been around the block by the time I was in my mid-30s, and I saw and I knew that what he was developing was absolutely revolutionary in spiritual work, because it was teaching about a way through. And he developed a method of helping people move through their ego structure instead of simply going beyond it or around it or above it. Mm-hmm. And that's an incredible contribution. For me personally, I had learned the Enneagram inside out and backwards with Claudio. We spent all of our time exploring it, exploring each other, giving each other feedback and so forth. And by the end of the time that I worked with him, I was deep in a sense of emptiness and deficiency, which is at the core of every single ego type. And I tried to meditate my way above it. I spent 2 years in a meditation center, and it didn't work. And it was only when Karen did a little piece of inquiry with me one day when I got home that I moved through it. And it was like, I knew this is amazing. Mm-hmm. And I also knew that this is what I wanted to be able to teach other people, because it's just so incredibly important for all of us. So I just want to say personally, I'm very pleased to be co-leading with Russ. We've never taught together. And it's his background is very much a Gurdjieffian one, which has been very, very interesting for me to find out more about.
A couple of things I feel moved to say from what you're saying, Sandra, is a couple of things that I carried over from the Gurdjieff work, because I saw them further articulated in the work that Hamid was doing. One of them is this idea of the fourth way. The Enneagram, Gurdjieff described as the seal and symbol of the fourth way. And in various conversations and I've had with Hamid and in writings he's done, he said pretty explicitly that this school, the Diamond Approach, Ridwan School, is a fourth way school. Well, what does that mean? Well, the way Gurdjieff explained it over 100 years ago, that the ways have to do with the awakening of the centers. And the first way is the way of the body, where you overcome our instinctual drives, celibacy, asceticism, embracing discomfort, like you go to India and you can still see fakirs doing stuff that you and I probably would not only not choose to do, but would have a great difficulty doing. But that's been around since the dawn of civilization, people working to overcome the body and its tendencies. The second is the second way is the way of the heart, which is like bhakti or yoga, so bhakti yoga or devotional paths. Many elements in some parts of Sufism or Christianity have a lot to do with devotion and the transformation of the heart. And the third way is the quieting of the mind, clarifying the mind. And Zen or some of the Buddhist traditions might be good examples of that. And he said these traditions were always around, but that they tended to require if not a fully monastic life, some sort of retirement from full participation in the ways of the world. He said the fourth way was unique in that it worked with all three centers simultaneously, which we do, which required a more refined understanding, which tools like the teachings of the Diamond Approach and the Enneagram do. They bring that more precise understanding. But also, the fourth way is always done within culture, in everyday life. There's no robes, no special uniform. You don't have to shave your head or grow a beard or anything. You just are in your community, because the fourth way is about something Sandra touched on. One of the impulses of the Western spiritual tradition is the manifestation of true nature in the world. And in working through the structures of our personality, which has been the genius of the work that Hamid did, we're given more of a capacity to do that, where our spirituality is not having vacations in non-dual states and then coming back to be a maniac again, but to find a way to embody our essential nature in our relationships, in our workplace, as we're stuck in traffic on the highway, as we're facing distressing news. So it's really about this inner work in life. This is not a spacey kind of spirituality. This is an embodied in the world, bringing the depth of our nature into the world so that the two aren't exactly two things anymore. They're integrated. They're part of a whole. The other element that comes to mind is an idea, the original teaching of the Enneagram from Gurdjieff, from something he called the law of seven, which is that things don't develop in a line. There are non-linear shifts in any real development. And certainly you can probably see that in your own journey, that you're going along, you're doing your practice, and then something big happens internally or externally, and you're in a different game. Well, this is, in the Gurdjieff work, we called it a shock point. Like you're doing it, and then something else has to come in and open it up, and another possibility appears. So I can tell you, when I encountered the Gurdjieff work way back in the 1970s, that was a shock point. It was a big shift, and suddenly I wasn't just reading, Advaita books or doing a little Zen practice or something. I had a path, and it really informed me. But I must tell you that another huge shock in my life was meeting Almaas. And when I met him and the impact of his being, how he embodied the very things he was talking about, and then receiving the teachings, big shock, changed everything. Different journey. I mean, I thought I was going to be a rock musician. But, as Sandra, I'm sure, reality tends to have other plans once we get touched by this impulse. So something else wakes up in us and sees a different picture. So I just wanted to offer, though, the reason I'm telling you about this, it's perhaps interesting, a little background about the Enneagram, but the reason I'm saying it is my sincere wish that this course will be a shock point for many of us in it, and for the future of the Enneagram field and what it can be as a force in the world. So that's what I'm hoping we can co-create in our time together.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So I thought I'd say a couple of words about how the course is structured. The course is going to take place on a Saturday and Sunday, I think in most time zones, for about 3.5 to 4 hours once a month for the next 11 months. And in that time, we'll be doing meditation, which hopefully will be deepening and helping you to really develop a meditation practice. We'll teach through lectures, exploring the material. And one of the main things is that there will be interactive exercises, personal explorations that you'll do with each other, and that really help you to make the material that you'll hear us talking about make it your own, finding it within your own soul, your own living consciousness, and learning about the practice of what we call inquiry in the diamond approach, of how to navigate through whatever is going on with us in such a way that it opens up and reveals something deeper. So we're going to be teaching you inquiry, how to inquire. In the course, of course, we're going to be inquiring into specific things at each meeting. But in the course of learning how to do that, you will be developing a capacity and a tool that you can use in the rest of your life as a way of personal exploration, either by yourself or with others. We're also going to have periods of questions and comments in which you can ask Russ and I about anything that we've been teaching about, any personal support that you need, just whatever is there for you as you're sitting with us. If you can't make a particular weekend, the course will be recorded and you can make it up and you can do the exercises on your own or with others who perhaps have missed the weekend, or others who are also taking the course. One of the things that I've discovered in being involved in the Diamond Approach for, it's now, I hate to tell you how long it's been. It's almost 40 years, is that it never hurts to explore the same material twice, because you will always learn more about it. The understanding that we're going to be teaching and hopefully opening up, making available for you in your direct experience is vast. And it's limitless. The understanding that you can glean from it has no edges, has no stopping point. And that's another thing I wanted to say about my work with the Enneagram. I've been working with the Enneagram now for, 52, 53 years. And there hasn't been a day that's gone by in my life when I haven't had an insight about my own Enneatype or about that of people I know, people I'm observing, which tells me that we as human beings, it's really a mirror of the fact that we as human beings are limitless. And we are vast mysteries who can never fully be nailed down. There is no end to discovery within ourselves of what we are and also what we're not. So we invite you to join us. But right now, I think it's time for us to take some questions.
Great, thank you. Let me bring myself on here so we can see. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we start bringing in questions, Russ?
No, I think that's a good place. And the other thing I would add is that when we hear about inquiry, we might think it's like an intellectual process. I can assure you it is not. It's inquiry requires all of our centers, and learning it is like learning any form of meditation or spiritual practice is something we get better at as we go. But it's kind of a unique offering of the Diamond Approach and really, really a good match with the Enneagram. So.
Yeah, it really helps unpack the Enneagram.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's see what they're asking out there.
Thank you for this great presentation. I have a question. I'm not real familiar with the Enneagram, but I've taken the test a few times, and I always come up as a 4. So what would you say, just as an example, what are some of the, I guess, the blocks to feeling one's true nature, being in one's true nature of a 4? For me, what I seem to come up with all the time is, I'm not good enough, I'm not valuable enough. I mean, is that the dark side of the 4? Or so how would you use that as approaching a 4 to try to help them realize their true nature, I guess? Like, what are my blocks? I want to get rid of them.
That's the whole course, but
right, exactly.
Say
right.
something.
Okay.
Thanks, Sandra, you and me on this.
Why don't you start, Russ?
Okay. Well, what you suggest there about feeling not good enough, yeah, that could be part of point 4, but really, as we'll learn in the course, deep down, most human beings feel that way. That we all have kind of a inner emptiness, a sense of deficiency, and we're forever, ever trying to do something to overcompensate for that. And as we'll see in the course, it's really that deficiency doesn't really have anything to do with what we're doing or not doing. It has much more to do with our disconnect from our essential nature. And so that's what we learn. 4, the block, there's so many things, we could do a long course on your that's the answer to your question. But in short, the issue of the 4 is a hard issue, but it has a lot to do with the realization of what we might broadly call our true identity, which isn't who we think we are, or even what we think we are most of the time. So a lot of the early stages of working with 4 self-observation can be around all the ways that we're constructing identity. How am I trying to be a unique individual? How am I trying to be different? How am I trying to be? The other area you can work on, more having to do with emotions, is how we get addicted to certain moods. There's certain kind of emotional atmospheres, and when that one's happening, that feels like me. And if you force space, that Chaucer described that emotional atmosphere as melancholy. That there's a kind of attachment to a kind of melancholy, not exactly depression, but it can lead to depression. But it's the way, again, it's all a way I'm trying to differentiate and discover and be who I really am, but in a way that is not ultimately going to satisfy. And all the Enneagram points are like that in some way. But as we go into the course, we have to look at, well, what is this true identity piece like? What does that feel like? How do we recognize it? What happens when we disconnect from it? And what goes on when we're just trying to survive in that disconnect? That's the kind of stuff we're looking at. And that's, again, where we move from the Enneagram just being a description of character structure to being a way, a path for our development. So I'm really glad you asked that question to kick us off, because that's in the spirit of what we want to be exploring. Unfortunately, Sandra and I can only say so much in the time we've got here with you, but I hope what I've said will give you a start anyway.
Yeah, it's good. That fits. Thank you. Okay.
Hi. I'm a complete, I know of the Enneagram. I've lived in Boulder, Colorado for 34 years. And the Ridwan Society just moved next door to me, literally, a couple months ago, curiously. But my question in listening to your preamble about the Enneagram was, if the Enneagram Enneatypes, is that what you call them?
Enneatypes.
Are coping mechanisms for dealing with separation from the divine.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yes, universally. There are different styles that we adopt as human beings in order to cope with the disconnection.
Okay.
Yeah, and in addition to that, part of what Hamid has explored in Keys to the Enneagram is that it's not disconnection in general from true nature, but there are specific qualities that each of us is very specifically disconnected from that matter very much to us. We're drawn to certain ways of being, and that has a lot to do with our Enneatype.
Okay.
But that's a great question. Yes, that's exactly what that's what the personality is, the ego is. It's a coping mechanism for the disconnection with true nature.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Hey, Russ. Hi, Sandra. It's great to meet you finally. I've read your books and been a student of yours without meeting you for a long time, so it's a thrill to meet you. And I'm looking forward to the course. So I have a somewhat similar background in many ways. I worked in the fourth way for many years. I went on a 9-month basic course with the Claymont Society. Then I kind of graduated to Buddhism for many years. And then 10 years ago, I really discovered both the Enneagram and the Diamond Approach at the same time and separately. And I found a Diamond Approach teacher I've been working with, doing one-on-one inquiry for about 8-9 years. But independently of that, I've been really working with exploring the Enneagram and even starting to teach it a little bit, you know. But it's always been interesting to me that in our inquiry session, he rarely brings up the Enneagram, and unless I bring it up, we don't explore it. So it doesn't seem to be a central part of what we do. It's been an amazing experience. It's been incredibly important to my spiritual development to work with a one-on-one with a Diamond Approach teacher. But that's what my question is about. You know, how typical and how important is it usually when you're a Diamond Approach student to work with your Enneatype or to even work with the Enneagram in general? Because you know, I'd love to do that with him, but you know, he's not really. He doesn't seem to think that's central to the approach. So that's my basic question.
Yeah, maybe I should answer that, Russ. You'll find throughout the Ridwan school that different teachers emphasize the Enneagram more or less. And the Enneagram has a kind of interesting place in the Diamond Approach where it's another channel. It's a different stream. It's not exactly the same stream as the Diamond Approach. And the overlap happens in some places, and we do teach it at various stages in our work where it does overlap. But in many, in really in a sense, it's a subset of the Diamond Approach, and it's not central. So it's more central to some teachers than it is to others. And you know, the saying comes to mind: "All roads lead to Rome." And I think if you inquire into yourself and you explore, it's all going to be there. And I think the Enneagram is incredibly helpful to know as a shortcut, because it really cuts through a lot of self-deception and a lot of beating around the bush with ourselves about, no, I'm not really like that. No, I couldn't possibly behave like that, or, you know, think like that. And to really get that, yeah, this is how I function. I think it saves a lot of years of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly been my experience so far. I feel like it's such I'm always finding that there's something new and essential about exploring different aspects of the Enneagram, like the instincts. I'm really exploring the instincts now, for example. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to your course.
Good.
And yeah.
I say one short thing, just that the Diamond approach is what I would call a living school, which means that its teachings are not fossilized, at least not yet. And I know that Hamid and Karen are very interested in finding ways to make sure we can delay any fossilization here as much as possible. And as such, the way it comes through to the different teachers, what they get from it, there's something organic about that. How it, who plays with the Enneagram, who doesn't, but also to note that this course represents a shift in kind of orientation around the Enneagram for the school. So there is a sense of, you know, we're all learning here. We're all still evolving. We're all discovering new dimensions. If you hang out with Hamid or Karen and their teachings, or Sandra or me for that matter, you'll see that at each stage we keep coming to new realizations about what we're up to or what's actually going on here. It just keeps getting more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
It's very nice to meet you guys in person. I've talked to Russ a few times, but I'm just really excited for this. And yeah, I actually have like a few, like I've read both of your books, like I love it so much. But I have a type 5 question, and I wanted to ask Russ if like what was the like defining like point for you finding out that you were a 5, because I'm trying to figure out like if that's my dominant type, and it's been a lot of like work around like trying to like get into my body and like fear of emptiness and going within, like without like trying to constantly figure things out. So I was just wondering about like when you found out you were 5.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things I could say, but I'll try to give the concise version. When I first learned the Enneagram of points of the personality types, I thought I was a 4. Like about 2/3 of the people, when they first find the Enneagram, everybody thinks they're a 4. We're deep and we're sad and we're misunderstood. You go out into the websites now, there are armies and armies of 4, and about 25% of them might be. But just for some reason that could be creative, deep, having feelings. And I tell people that's not a type, that's a human being. So I thought that at first. When I learned this a long time ago, before there was a lot of literature about it. But over time, in working with Don Riso, I started to realize, no, probably not a 4, but what was I? This is where what Sandra and I were saying earlier comes in handy. Because if you stop thinking of it as just a kind of person, and instead think of it as a map for your liberation and development, my first question I always ask people, which one helps you wake up the most? That's where you want to play. And yes, it's seeing your character structure. For me, and we'll go into this in the course, so if you don't understand this out there, the Enneagram has these inner lines that make the kind of interesting pattern. They have meaning, and they're part of the unfolding of the point. They're part of the unfolding of the type. So for me, very simply, when I saw that as a metaphor for what I needed for my development had a lot more to do with 8 and 7, the 2 points connected to point 5. than it did for 1 and 2, which were the points connected to point 4. That wasn't really my issue in a certain way, but the 7 and 8 were. And so those kind of, when you start to look at the whole thing as a map and as a runway, actually, for you taking off into the exploration of what you are beyond all this, that's what becomes helpful. So even you saying, for example, you're just starting to notice you're not so in touch with your body. That's a great start.
Yeah, it was because I feel like it's easy to like look at the external manifestations of I just like the behavior of it, and people type me as like a 6 a lot, and but inside I don't feel like that's like I can feel the fear, but it feels like the way I cope with it is by detaching and withdrawing. But I still have the sexual instinct, so it's like I still want to connect with people, but it's so that was kind of my confusion because of the sexual subtype being this counter type or something. But
yeah, it's called in some circles, yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
And going into my body and like embodying more of the 8 like warrior qualities have actually been incredibly helpful for me. So I feel, and maybe like it is the 5 that will be more like a growth path, and like even like asking questions like here, it feels like kind of going against like that vulnerability and like that fear of like just pushing against. It's like a form of pushing against like the wiring of like, oh, I should just kind of stay like withdrawn and like not kind of go out there and engage.
Yeah. So you get to, again, if you're looking at it from the point of view of that we'll be looking at, how does it help you? Like in my 5-ness, my religion is contact, because my schizoid temperament that I was imprinted with withdraws from contact, contracts from contact, doesn't want contact. It was there from a very early stage. So there is a process. For me, embodiment means the sense of contact. And that's a way I know I'm not just making it up. And I'm just glad to be talking with you about this, because this is how we want to explore this. It's like debating between various descriptions of what a person is like. It's interesting, but as I said, can just lead us around in circles for a long time. When you really are confronted with what is catching you, what you keep returning to, what you keep getting stuck in, and glimpses of what naturally manifests as your gift.
Yeah,
you start to be in the right direction.
It's maybe like why it's hard for some people to find their type is because like they don't want to see just like they kind of want to go around like all the other ones to not see the one that actually hurts to look at. For me, that was like the 5, like this I just see it and withdraw, and like that's my dominant relationship pattern. So like just seeing that is like, oh, actually that's what's like the most difficult to work with. So
well, I hope you can come on the course, and we can explore that a whole lot further.
I'll definitely do.
And I think the material we're going to be exploring can give people a big hint about what they gravitate toward and how that's connected with a particular Enneatype.
Yes.
I just want to, I was aware that when you said everyone thinks they're a 4 at the beginning, I was shaking my head. I hoped I was a 4.
Yeah.
Right. When I first heard about the Enneagram, I profoundly wanted to be a 4. And the last thing in the world I wanted to be was a 2.
The 4s always say, the people who really are 4s do not understand why everybody wants to be a 4.
Right.
Yeah, it's cute. But, this is the sort of fun of exploring it. And just to say, we need to approach the whole topic with a certain degree of humility, because we human beings are not really educated by modern society to be aware of this level of our being. We're just not. And so the fact that we resonate with this or that description, okay, very well, but that does not necessarily reflect the dynamic that is operating in your consciousness. So that's why the practices we're working with and learning, that's why the presence practices, the inquiry practices, all of that is to begin to see what's going on in us more accurately. And then one day you can't miss it. It's like, oops, there it is. And to quote the old song, and it's obvious what's going on. But we have to give ourselves some patience and kindness, because frankly, we haven't been educated by life to see this dimension of ourselves so easily.
First of all, I want to express my gratitude to you both for taking this time out to tell us about the course and to tell us what your orientation is about the Enneagram and the Diamond Heart work, and also the Gurdjieff work. I'm familiar with all of them. I did Gurdjieff work in New York for years. I also did Diamond Heart 6 for a while here in California. And I really appreciated, Russ, your orientation or your perspective on boxes. That was very helpful to hear if that's where you're coming from. Because when I was starting to study the Enneagram, I studied it initially with Helen Palmer and then moved on to Rousseau and others. And what I came to understand is that stepping outside the conventional boxes of Western psychology, it seems like I was stepping into another box with this typology system, and I didn't want to go there. I had enough of boxes. I didn't want to go into any more boxes. So even the way, I mean, maybe it's a trick of language, but even the way that we're talking about it, about being a 4 or being a 6, it seems like it's reifying the situation still. And I just wonder if the course that you're offering is going to help us to break out of those boxes. I don't want to be a thing. I'm if anything, I'm more of a process. I'm more of a wave than a particle. I get that. And, you know, I assume one of the most influential books I ever read in my whole life was The Spiritual Dimensions of the Enneagram, Sandra. So I wanted to thank you personally for having written it, because it did open my eyes to that. This is not something that we're trying to put on ourselves.
Right.
You know, this is a process of releasing or revealing what qualities are inherent in our very being. That's why it's called true nature.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And maybe the very points that we're fixated to, or the ones that we're attracted to, are the very places we need to go into a deeper understanding of reality.
Yes, exactly. And
well, that's what I got from your book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. But I did want to ask you, and maybe again it's a trick of language, about that. Is this a when I found out about the Diamond Heart, I was in Diamond Heart 6 for over a year, and when I found out about it, I had a teacher, and I was also doing Vajrayana Mahamudra practice at the same time. And in consultation with her, she thought, well, maybe I should just commit to one of them. And I found myself, and I couldn't make the full commitment to Ridwan, even though I wanted to, because it was wonderfully and psychologically wise. But I decided to go to the path of emptiness in the Mahamudra path. And I've been doing that ever since, like 20 more years. So my question has to do with is this a path of emptiness? Is this a path where we aren't trying to lock down or fix anything, but we're trying to reveal, we're trying to like leave it open for exploration? I mean, I know that's what inquiry does, and I learned that in Diamond Heart, but even some of the questions today have to do with, well, I'm a 5, I'm a 6, I'm a this, I'm a that. That doesn't seem to be, for me at least, the way I want to go. I want to open things up, not close them down into categories.
Well, to say things like that, I am this Enneatype or that Enneatype, is really a shorthand, as I see it, for saying the long version is the way that my personality or my ego is structured is in this particular pattern. But it doesn't mean this is who you are. And that's a problem that I think a lot of people encounter when they engage in the Enneagram. Some people go to it to try to get another better, more accurate label for themselves, or a sense of identity, more of a reification, to use that language. But ultimately, what Russ and I are both saying is that the Enneagram is a tool to break out of our reifications. Mm-hmm. It's a tool to break out of the patterns that define how our ego functions. But our ego, our personality, is not who we are. It's not who we are. And our Enneatype, likewise, is not who we are. It's just, it's a way of labeling a pattern that our ego structure takes, and that in turn influences how we function as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. So I'm thinking what I hear, but maybe I'm interpreting it in my mind, is that the Enneatype that we identify with or can identify with is actually a gateway to greater dimensions of being.
Absolutely. Bingo. You got it. You got it. Absolutely.
Good. I'll give myself a gold star later.
Can I have one little thing there for Richard? The other danger zone, that's one side of the danger zone. The other is spiritual bypass.
Yes.
Very popular. I'm sure in your journey, you've run into a lot of checked out individuals who think they're enlightened, right? My shorthand is that we are not our Enneatype, but we have one. Mm-hmm. And it's not going anywhere. But as we become conscious of it, as I was saying earlier, it takes its correct place. It becomes integrated into that emptiness, into the more vast elements of our nature. But if I had $1 for every person I've met declaring their non-dual liberation, absolutely from their fixated Enneagram pattern, we could all go out to a nice dinner. It's so, you know, the Enneagram and everything we're looking at, and a lot of the diamond approach is trying to honestly look at that depth that you discussed, but also realistically about here's where we are most of the time. And you have to take that into account too, you know, and how does that fit together?
Well, thank you for coming. And if your heart feels moved to join us, to continue with us, we'd be most happy to have you. And we really hope that our work today and in the course is of benefit to you personally and ripples out to the whole of humanity. So, Russ, you want to say something?
Just I'm very grateful and thrilled to be on this adventure, teaching this with you, Sandra, and with Hamid and Karen's backup and blessing. And I'm really, I just, as I said earlier, I think it's this course is perfectly timed to release a new wave into the whole field, and hopefully from there, maybe to have some good influence in this world.
I think it's important for each type to know what is their gift, which I call the natural endowment.
Yeah.
Natural endowment means as we come into this world, there is one particular spiritual quality, a spiritual dimension that is naturally we are endowed with. We do get disconnected with it as we develop an ego. But as we are opened up, that's one of the things that opens up first and can help us connect with the rest of our spiritual nature. So for, number one, for instance, I talk about the aspect of intelligence, pure intelligence, which is a quality of pure brilliance, brilliance that is a presence, not the brilliance of mind or brilliance of something, but the brilliance as an isness. Brilliant light, but as a compact, dense, like fluid brilliance. And that appears as intelligence, as perfection, as rightness, as how to know what is right. And has to do with the right way of things, right way, how right way to live, right way to be. So it gives a compass, it gives a moral compass to that way. But it is an intelligence. Intelligence is pure, also the aspect of pure intelligence. And if we go to number 2, which is very different, which is actually that approach, the qualities of point 1 and 2 are very central. Point 2 has to do with what I call merging love, which is the love that has to do with connection, with communion, with bonding, with sharing, with giving, with generosity, with richness, nurturance, all of that. And classically, I don't know how it is now, but classically throughout the ages, the brilliance somehow got associated with the father figure, with the fathering figure, whatever the fathering figure is, while the merging gold got connected with the mothering figure. And maybe things now, because of the gender identities going through flux and changes, things might change. But the way I saw them in the 70s and 80s, those two are connected with the father, and father and mother are, for, of course, the main thing for a child is their parents. So these qualities stand as sort of important that way. When we go to number 3, interesting thing, as you mentioned, about a being. So in point 3, the quality is how to be an individual being, but a being of spiritual nature, a being of pure consciousness, a being of pure presence, a person of presence, with a sense of capacity and capability and effectiveness and efficiency, which make us see how the 3 is trying to be that way. 4, we go into something else, which is interesting, which has to do with identity, because the self has a sense of being an individual, but with a nice sense of self-knowing, identity. What I am, who am I? And the identity in the essential level, the spiritual level, is a point, what's called the point of light and presence, I call it the point of existence, which is known by many spiritual teachings. And many people experience the point of light that seems, it's like brilliance of number 1, but as a living point, as a point with its own intelligence, with its own light, with its own qualities, and it has a sense in it of uniqueness, authenticity, and originality, all of that, which is the thing that for idealized. When we go to number 5, the quality has to do with understanding. Many people think 5 want knowledge. I don't think so. I think 5 want to understand things. They accumulate knowledge sometimes, thinking knowledge will give them understanding. But all the 5s I've known, they want to understand reality themselves and all of that. So the quality of understanding has to do with what I call diamond guidance, which is a certain form that through nature manifests, which has to do with clarity and precision and discernment, and that functions to help us, guide us in our understanding of ourselves, so we know we're going in the right direction and further illuminating what is happening. And because that is an important thing, I think, for people to know about the 5s. Because I remember in the beginning, when it's the 5 is the idealized knowledge. And through the idealized knowledge, the collective knowledge. But the more free the 5 is from their fixation, the more that what they want, they don't want to collect just to know as much as possible. They want to understand things. What's the point of having, even scientists, why do they collect all this information? So they can understand what they're studying, and they could solve the problem or develop something. Understanding is more important than just knowledge. Point 6 brings up the quality that is 6 usually tend to lack, which is a sense of confidence, self-confidence, sense of grounding, sense of what I call inner will, which is different from what the ego will. The ego will be, I have my own choice, I have my own volition, I have my own decision. Here, will is not that. It's how more the confidence to be able to do what I want to do. The capacity, the endurance, the steadfastness to do it. Because to do something, to accomplish something, to fulfill a task, you not only feel that you supported to do it, but you need to feel you can continue doing it regardless of difficulties. And that's this. So the true will, essential will, has to do with capacity, make us feel we can stay steadfast, we won't be dissuaded. Number 7 goes on because 7 is usually known as the one who's always looking to enjoy life, go from one thing that is exciting and fun to another thing, from one kind of cuisine to another, like Bourdon from CNN was, from one kind of book to another, from kind of spiritual experience to another, which means it's about pleasure, but the quality of pleasure that I make it be quality for 7 is the form of true nature that has the different quality, that shows there are many kinds of pleasure, of true pleasure, where your own being is pure bliss and pleasure. And that appears in many qualities. That will help explain why the 7s are going, I have this pleasure, oh, this feels like tangerine kind of bliss, wonderful. But after a day or two, say, well, I want something that tastes more like banana. Tangerine every day is boring after a while. Well, our true nature gives us a whole slew of flavors. So that explains the quality, the essential quality that I call the Markava, which means vehicle. And then we go to number 8, where 8s are known to be bullies or boisterous and all of that, but really that outer expression of fiery, the fierce, bold and expansive quality that is the natural endowment of number 8 that we call essential strength, which is the fiery aspect of spirit that has energy, that has liveliness, that has expansiveness, has a sense of capacity, sense of I can, not that I will do, but I can do. And then we go to number 9, which is considered the center of all of them. And what we find there, because 9s are supposed to be the moderator, the mediator, the people that want to make people comfortable and people taken care of, because their true endowment has to do with some kind of love that is a comforting love, that a holding kind of love, that is love that is not just for one person, but for everybody, for the whole situation. So that's what I call divine love, which is a whole, talk about as a whole dimension, which means we experience it as the underlying the whole universe, all of existence is really, which is all spiritual teachings say that the spiritual nature underlies the whole universe. But here shows the goodness of that spiritual nature. So it's really the true goodness that I think the natural endowment for number 9. So that might help people who know the Enneagram only the typology, see what awaits them, all the treasure that awaits them. You're not going to get only the quality of your type. You can get all the qualities by studying, all the types are in you. And if you really study each one of them, if you get your type, that's maybe the easiest, but then that makes the other types are accessible to you, so you could connect to the other qualities.